ExamPrep.School. Maryland Public Insurance Adjuster Exam. Exam Code 20-23. There are 6 practice exams in this series. This video covers Practice Exam 1. The first 20 questions are free. In this video, we will be covering the following major categories for Practice Exam 1. Adjusting losses, business owner's policy, commercial package policy, dwelling policy, homeowner's policy, insurance basics, insurance regulation, other coverages. Let's walk through the format. I'll read each question and its choices. Let's get started. Question 1. Under Maryland law, how does a licensed public adjuster differ from an independent adjuster? A. Operates solely under direct insurer appointment, unlike the independent adjuster who represents either party. B. Performs loss appraisals exclusively for insurers, while independent adjusters handle only catastrophic claims. C. Represents the insured in adjusting claims, whereas the independent adjuster is employed by insurers. D. Sets policy premiums for the insured and negotiates underwriting guidelines for insurers. A countdown circle appears in the top right. Once it completes, the answer is revealed. You can pause at any time if you'd like longer to think. If you'd like additional practice covering more topics, see the description for our book. The correct answer is C. A public adjuster acts on behalf of the insured in preparing, filing, and adjusting first-party claims, whereas independent adjusters act under contract to insurers. Reason A is not correct. This option reverses representational roles. Public adjusters do not operate under insurer appointment. Reason B is not correct. This option confuses roles. Public adjusters do not appraise losses exclusively for insurers, and independent adjusters are not limited to catastrophes. Reason D is not correct. This option describes underwriting functions, which are not duties of either adjuster type. Question 2. Which of the following activities constitutes public adjusting in Maryland and therefore requires a public adjuster license? A. Advising an insured on policy coverage without filing or adjusting a claim. B. Inspecting property damage and negotiating claim settlements on behalf of the insuredee. C. Providing legal representation to an insured in a courtroom proceeding. D. Selling flood insurance policies to homeowners in designated areas. The correct answer is B. Inspecting damage and negotiating settlements on behalf of the insured are core public adjusting activities that require licensure in Maryland. Reason A is not correct. Advising on coverage alone is not adjusting. It lacks claim filing or settlement activities. Reason C is not correct. Legal representation in court is an attorney function, not public adjusting. Reason D is not correct. Selling insurance requires a producer license, not a public adjuster license. Question 3. Which eligibility requirement must an individual meet before applying for a Maryland public adjuster license? A. Be at least 18 years old, hold a high school diploma, and complete a state-approved internship. B. Be at least 21 years old, hold an insurance producer license in another state, and pass a Maryland exam. C. Be at least 18 years old, submit to a background check, and pass the Maryland public adjuster examination. D. Be at least 21 years old, have 2 years of adjusting experience, and maintain errors and omissions insurance. The correct answer is C. Applicants must be at least 18, undergo a criminal background check, and successfully pass the Maryland public adjuster exam before licensure. Reason A is not correct. A diploma and internship are not statutory prerequisites for public adjuster licensing. Reason B is not correct. There is no requirement for an existing out-of-state producer license or higher minimum age. Reason D is not correct. Maryland does not mandate 2 years of experience or specific insurance coverage for initial licensure. Question 4. Under Maryland insurance licensing regulations, what fingerprinting requirement must an applicant fulfill when applying for a public adjuster license? A. Provide a physical fingerprint card mailed directly to the department within 90 days. B. Undergo only a state-level criminal history check without foreign background reporting. C. Submit electronic fingerprints through a vendor approved by the Maryland Insurance Administration within 30 days of application. D. Obtain a federal criminal background waiver if no convictions occurred in the past 5 years. The correct answer is C. Applicants must submit electronic fingerprints via an administration-approved vendor within 30 days of application to facilitate state and federal background checks. Reason A is not correct. Physical cards in a 90-day window are not compliant with the requirement for electronic submissions. Reason B is not correct. Maryland requires both state and federal background checks, not only state-level checks. Reason D is not correct. No waiver is available based on clean criminal history. Fingerprinting is mandatory. Question 5. After completing the required 20-hour pre-licensing education course, which action should Alex undertake next to advance his Maryland Public Adjuster license application with the state regulator? A. Register and schedule fingerprints with a state-approved vendor for a background check. B. Submit a completed license application and the required fee to the Maryland Insurance Administration. C. Schedule the Maryland Public Adjuster licensing examination with the state-approved testing vendor. D. Purchase and submit evidence of errors and omissions. Insurance coverage to the administration. The correct answer is B. The correct answer is the submission of the completed application and fee, as that officially initiates the public adjuster licensing process before fingerprints or examination scheduling. Reason A is not correct. Fingerprint scheduling is required but occurs after the application and fee have been submitted to initiate the licensing process. Reason C is not correct. Examination scheduling is permitted only after the regulator receives a complete application and fee payment. Reason D is not correct. Errors and omissions insurance evidence is submitted post-licensure and is not part of the initial application filing. Question 6. Which of the following elements is required in a written contract between a public adjuster and an insured under Maryland law? A. Name, license number, and business address of the public adjuster. B. Mandatory arbitration clause for fee disputes. C. Waiver of the insured's right to litigate against the insurer. D. Provision for attorney's fees if the claim is delayed. The correct answer is A. The written contract must include the public adjuster's name, license number, and business address to ensure transparency and regulatory compliance. Reason B is not correct. Arbitration clauses are not mandated by Maryland Public Adjuster statute. Reason C is not correct. Waiving litigation rights is prohibited and not a required contract term. Reason D is not correct. Including attorney's fees provisions is not a statutory requirement for the contract. Question 7. What is the primary consumer protection purpose of requiring a written contract between a public adjuster and an insured in Maryland? A. Ensure the insured fully understands the scope of services and fee arrangement. B. Authorize the adjuster to bind coverage on behalf of the insurer. C. Require the insured to waive subrogation rights against the adjuster. D. Guarantee prompt payment of the claim by the insurer. The correct answer is A. Requiring a written contract promotes consumer protection by ensuring the insured is aware of exactly what services the adjuster will perform and how fees will be calculated. Reason B is not correct. Binding coverage authority lies with the insurer, not via the adjuster's contract. Reason C is not correct. Waiving subrogation rights is not a consumer protection objective or contract requirement. Reason D is not correct. Insurer payment timing is governed by policy terms and statutes, not the adjuster contract. Question 8. Under Maryland law, within what time frame must a public adjuster deliver a signed copy of the contract to the insured? A. No later than 30 days after the insured signs the contract. B. within 48 hours after the adjuster files the first proof of loss. C. At least 10 business days before any services begin. D. By the insurer's first claim payment. The correct answer is A. Maryland statute requires that a public adjuster provide the insured with a fully executed copy of the contract no later than 30 days after the insured's signature. Reason B is not correct. The filing of proof of loss is unrelated to the contract delivery deadline. Reason C is not correct. There is no requirement to deliver the contract before services begin. Reason D is not correct. First claim payment timing does not govern contract delivery under Maryland law. Question 9. A homeowner hires a Maryland licensed public adjuster to handle a residential windstorm claim. The engagement agreement states only that the adjuster will receive a reasonable fee. Under Maryland law, what additional fee disclosure must the adjuster include in the contract? A. An hourly billing rate schedule for all services provided. B. A stated maximum dollar amount that will be charged regardless of recovery. C. A clear statement of the contingency fee percentage or the formula for computing it. D. A clause specifying that out-of-pocket expenses will be reimbursed by the client. The correct answer is C. The Maryland Public Adjuster Act requires engagement agreements to disclose the contingency fee rate or the precise method for calculating the fee. Simply stating a reasonable fee without specifying the percentage or formula fails to inform the client of the exact compensation terms. Reason A is not correct. Hourly billing rates are not required for contingency fee public adjuster agreements under Maryland law, which focuses on percentage disclosures. Reason B is not correct. Disclosing a maximum dollar cap is not sufficient under Maryland regulations. The law mandates disclosure of the fee percentage or its calculation method. Reason D is not correct. Reimbursement of expenses is addressed separately. The statute specifically requires fee percentage or formula disclosure rather than an expense clause. Question 10. Which of the following actions is within the regulatory authority of the Maryland Insurance Administration when overseeing licensed public adjusters? A. Conduct periodic examinations of public adjuster records and business practices. B. Subpoena insureds to resolve individual claim disputes. C. Mandate specific fee schedules and compensation rates for public adjusters. D. Directly adjudicate financial disputes between adjusters and policyholders. The correct answer is A. The Maryland Insurance Administration is empowered to examine the books, records, and business practices of licensed public adjusters to ensure compliance with law. It does not set compensation rates, resolve individual claim disputes through subpoenas for that purpose, or adjudicate disputes between adjusters and policyholders. Reason B is not correct. Although the administration can subpoena documents and testimony for investigations, it may not subpoena insured specifically to resolve individual claim disputes. Reason C is not correct. The administration does not regulate or fix the compensation rates public adjusters may charge. Those are negotiated between adjusters and clients. Reason D is not correct. The administration lacks authority to serve as an adjudicator in financial disputes between adjusters and policyholders. Those issues are handled by courts or arbitration. Question 11. When investigating a complaint against a licensed public adjuster, which of the following investigatory powers does the Maryland Insurance Administration possess? A. Directly negotiate settlement amounts with policyholders. B. Award restitution to claimants on behalf of the insurer. C. Administer oaths and take testimony under oath. D. Permit adjusters to revise insurance policy terms without prior approval. The correct answer is C. Under Maryland law, the administration may administer oaths and take testimony as part of its complaint investigations. It does not have authority to award restitution, negotiate claim settlements, or authorize policy revisions without insurer and insured agreement. Reason A is not correct. Settlement negotiations fall within an adjuster's or insurer's contractual duties, not the administration's investigatory powers. Reason B is not correct. The administration's investigative role does not extend to awarding monetary restitution. Enforcement actions may follow, but restitution is determined through orders or litigation. Reason D is not correct. Policy term revisions require insurer and insured consent and regulatory filings. The administration cannot unilaterally permit adjusters to revise policies. Question 12. You are the compliance officer for a Maryland public adjuster. On November 1st, you received a written notice from the Maryland Insurance Commissioner citing Maryland Code Ann Inzier's Section 2-112 and requiring submission of all claim files, adjuster diaries, and financial records within 20 days for review. You believe adjuster diaries are not subject to inspection. Which regulatory power is being exercised? A. Authority to issue a subpoena. Duces tecum for witness testimony and documents. B. Authority to impose administrative fines for failure to comply with prior orders. C. Authority to suspend or revoke a license for misconduct. D. Authority to examine and copy all books, records, and files of a licensee. The correct answer is D. The Commissioner's authority under Section 2-112 authorizes the administrative examination and copying of any licensee books, records, and files, including adjuster diaries and financial statements. This is separate from subpoena powers or enforcement sanctions. Reason A is not correct. Issuing a subpoena duces tecum is a judicial procedure and not the Commissioner's administrative examination authority. Reason B is not correct. Imposing fines is a sanction for noncompliance, not the initial power to request and review records. Reason C is not correct. Suspending or revoking a license is an enforcement action, not the power to conduct record examinations. Question 13. Under Maryland Insurance Code, Title 27, which of the following actions by a licensed public adjuster is classified as rebating, an unfair trade practice? A. Recommending additional policy coverages based solely on an insured's expressed risk concerns. B. Charging the exact filing fees mandated by the Commissioner's fee schedule. C. Returning a portion of the premium to a claimant as an inducement to retain coverage. D. Providing a client with a detailed explanation of their policy's submission requirements. The correct answer is C. This action is a rebate because it involves returning part of the premium to induce retention of coverage, which is prohibited under Maryland Insurance Code Title 27. Reason A is not correct. Recommending coverage based on expressed needs is a permissible advisory activity. Reason B is not correct. Charging fees according to the official schedule is compliant with code requirements. Reason D is not correct. Providing procedural information does not involve an unfair trade practice. Question 14. Under Maryland Insurance Code, which of the following actions by a public adjuster exemplifies misrepresentation of policy provisions, an unfair trade practice? A. Explaining the effect of an endorsement exactly as printed in the contract. B. Confirming the policy excludes certain perils as stated in the actual contract language. C. Distributing the policy's declarations page without commentary on coverage limits. D. Informing a homeowner that their standard homeowner's policy automatically provides flood coverage under Section 2. The correct answer is D. This is misrepresentation because it falsely states that flood coverage is provided under a standard homeowner's policy, which is typically excluded. Reason A is not correct. Repeating endorsement language verbatim does not misrepresent coverage. Reason B is not correct. Accurately describing exclusions matches the actual policy provisions and is permitted. Reason C is not correct. Providing the declarations page without commentary does not alter policy terms. Question 15. A Maryland licensed public adjuster places an online advertisement stating guaranteed 100% recovery on all homeowner claims and includes the adjuster's license number. According to Maryland regulations on false advertising by public adjusters, which element of this advertisement violates the standards? A. Including the adjuster's license number in the ad. B. The use of the word guaranteed in promising full recovery. C. Displaying the company logo and branding alongside the text. D. Offering an initial no-cost consultation to prospective clients. The correct answer is B. The advertisement's promise of guaranteed 100% recovery is an unsubstantiated claim about claim outcomes, constituting false or misleading advertising under Maryland law. Reason A is not correct. Including the license number is required and not a violation. Reason C is not correct. Using a company logo and branding is permissible marketing. Reason D is not correct. Offering free consultations is allowed and not misleading. Question 16. Which of the following best defines the element of competent parties in a valid insurance contract? A. Exchange of the premium by the insured for the insurer's promise to indemnify. B. Mutual assent between parties to the specified contract terms. C. Ownership interest giving a financial stake in the insured property. D. Parties' possession of legal capacity and competency to enter the contract. The correct answer is D. The element of competent parties requires that both parties have legal capacity and competency to enter into the contract, ensuring enforceability. Reason A is not correct. This describes consideration, the exchange of value rather than competent parties. Reason B is not correct. This refers to acceptance or meeting of the minds, not party competency. Reason C is not correct. This defines insurable interest, which is separate from the four essential contract elements. Question 17. Which obligation in an insurance contract is solely borne by the insurer, illustrating the contract's unilateral nature? A. Obligation to pay the contract premium on each due date. B. Promise to indemnify losses covered under the policy terms. C. Duty to disclose material information during application. D. Requirement to maintain an insurable interest in the subject matter. The correct answer is B. A unilateral contract involves only the insurer making a binding promise to indemnify, while the insured's obligations are separate. Reason A is not correct. Premium payment is an obligation of the insured, not the insurer. Reason C is not correct. Duty to disclose material facts typically rests with the insured. Reason D is not correct. Maintaining insurable interest is a requirement on the insured side. Question 18. A homeowner pays a $500 annual premium for a dwelling fire policy that will cover up to $200,000 in damage if a fire occurs, but pays nothing if no fire happens. Which statement best illustrates how the aleatory contract concept affects consideration in this policy? A. Both parties exchange equal amounts regardless of the outcome of the event. B. The insurer's promise to pay is unconditional regardless of whether a loss occurs. C. The unequal exchange of values is contingent upon the uncertain occurrence of loss. D. Premiums are refunded to the insured if no claim is made during the policy period. The correct answer is C. The aleatory nature of insurance means that the premium and benefit amounts are unequal and dependent on an uncertain event occurring. Reason A is not correct. The parties do not exchange equal values. The insured pays a small premium, while the insurer may pay a large claim. Reason B is not correct. Insurance promises are conditional on a covered event occurring, so they are not unconditional. Reason D is not correct. Standard insurance contracts do not require refunding premiums when no loss occurs. Question 19. In property insurance, an insurable interest must exist at which point to ensure coverage is valid? A. At the time the application is submitted. B. At the policy's inception date. C. At the moment the premium is paid. D. At the time of loss. The correct answer is D. The requirement for insurable interest in property insurance is that the insured must have a financial stake in the property when the loss occurs. Other points do not satisfy this principle. Reason A is not correct. An interest at application is not sufficient. Coverage validity hinges on interest at loss rather than application. Reason B is not correct. Policy inception timing applies more to life insurance. Property insurance focuses on interest at loss. Reason C is not correct. Premium payment timing has no bearing on insurable interest requirements for property coverage. Question 20. Which statement best distinguishes moral hazard from morale hazard in underwriting? A. Moral hazard arises from intentional dishonesty, whereas morale hazard stems from carelessness or indifference. B. Moral hazard is driven by carelessness, and morale hazard by deliberate fraud. C. Moral hazard refers to unforeseen perils, and morale hazard to geographical risks. D. Moral hazard is linked to policy exclusions, and morale hazard to premium fluctuations. The correct answer is A. Moral hazard involves conscious actions to deceive or increase risk for gain, while morale hazard reflects an insured's indifferent attitude that can lead to careless behavior. The other options mischaracterize these concepts. Reason B is not correct. Carelessness describes morale hazard rather than moral hazard, which is about intentional misconduct. Reason C is not correct. Unforeseen perils and geographic factors are unrelated to hazard distinctions in this context. Reason D is not correct. Policy exclusions and premium changes do not define the behavioral differences between moral and morale hazard. Enjoyed this practice test? Tap like, hit subscribe, and share it with a classmate. Got a question we should tweak? Comment below. We read them all. Find full practice exam books in the description or at ExamPrep.School.